This avalanche safety report is brought to you by MTN-TV. Learn more at MTN-TV.com.
Welcome to the weekly Avalanche Safety Report. I am here with Brian Lazar from the CAIC. How you doing today, Brian?
I'm doing well, thanks, Alan. How about you?
I'm doing great, thank you. A lot more avalanche activity. Let's jump into it.
Yeah, the good news is it's the avalanche danger is continuing this, slowly easing of the hazardous conditions. We're starting to see more yellow come onto the map, which means moderate avalanche danger. And the key take-home message from this week is moderate danger or yellow on the map does not mean safe. And I kind of want to show you why. Essentially, we've come out of this long period, almost a month, where we've seen large swaths of particularly the northern and central mountains sitting at considerable avalanche danger or level 3 of 5. We have been slowly sliding down the considerable bin and just at moderate. But what this graphic will show you is that it is not simply a stepwise function, that each avalanche danger rating contains a range of avalanche conditions. And what we've done just now in many of these areas have just crossed the line from the considerable avalanche danger into moderate, but it's important to note we are at the high end of the moderate danger rating, which does not mean safe. So what this means is that we have seen the number of human-triggered avalanches slowly decrease over the last few weeks. But this graph all by itself is pretty impressive. Since about Christmas, we've only seen one day, and that was on Christmas Day, without a large human-triggered avalanche somewhere in the state. That's a long run of constant avalanche activity, even for Colorado. And what makes this worrisome is a huge portion of these avalanches were triggered remotely or from a distance, many of them from below the slope. And also that a good portion of these were large enough to bury, injure, or kill a person. This is indicating that avalanche conditions are slowly becoming more stable. It's getting a little bit harder to trigger avalanches. But as this graphic from our avalanche forecast shows, even though the chances of triggering an avalanche have dropped from this likely term to possible, it does not mean the consequences have changed. And in fact, the consequences remain as severe as ever. The avalanches are still going to be quite large and destructive, even though the chances of triggering one are going down.
So let's talk about that a little bit more, Brian. So the risk is decreasing, or the number of occurrences is decreasing, but the risk is still pretty high. And
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's like, your odds of triggering any particular slope and causing an avalanche is just slowly declining. That's why we're moving into moderate danger. But the consequences are not, because the avalanches, when they do fail, are still failing in these pretty scary ways. Like here's an example from Berthoud Pass. You can see the avalanches are breaking quite deep, in this case going down all the way to the ground. These are really difficult avalanches to survive. Here's one near Breckenridge, which is almost 8 feet deep at its thickest. And so again, these are very scary avalanches, and you can imagine how hard it might be to survive getting washed down an avalanche track like this with blocks the size of, potentially small cars, for example. And these conditions are not confined to the northern mountains. Here's an example from down near the San Juan Mountains. And this is a really good illustration of the kinds of terrain that are producing these avalanches. Essentially, you can see the windswept ridge along the top of the image here, thin rocky areas right over a convex roll, and these are the kinds of terrain features we want people to avoid. You can see the ski track coming through the lower part of the image here, and this ski track triggered this avalanche from that far away, even though that terrain was above them. And fortunately, no one was caught in this particular avalanche. Got one more avalanche I'd like to show you that took place during our last wind loading event from last week in the Elk Mountains. And again, these are just really good reminders that although the likelihood of triggering an avalanche is going down, the consequences are not. And so as we move into the weekend, you can see Colorado here in the red box. We're going to see some more snow. This snow starts to pile up on Friday night and through Saturday, trickling out by Saturday night. You can see that it's favoring areas in the Park Range up near Steamboat, along the northern Front Range, and at the very tail end down near the Sangre de Cristo Mountains on the east side of the Continental Divide. In those northern mountain areas, we could see around 8 to 12 inches of snow total. That could very well bump the danger back up to considerable in those northern mountain areas, but I cannot emphasize enough that in the large portions of the central and southern mountains that might sit at moderate danger, I know people have got pent-up demand. It's been really dangerous conditions for about a month now. please do not take the moderate danger rating as a green light to travel into more consequential terrain. It's going to require very cautious route finding, very careful terrain selection in order to stay safe out there this weekend. And if that's also complicated by the fact that we have a fairly complicated snowpack structure. So if that seems too complicated for you, you can always recreate safely in the backcountry by staying on slopes less than about 30 degrees without steeper overhead hazard. Also, these lower elevation south-facing slopes do offer some safer riding options because they don't harbor that same worrisome, persistent weak layer that's producing these avalanches everywhere else. Because it's such a complex scenario, this is a good time to get more familiar with our forecasts, go deeper than just looking at the colors or the danger rating on the homepage map. Read what the forecasters are writing in the summary, dig into the forecast discussion if you really want to get a handle on current conditions.
Excellent information, Brian. And once again, let's underscore, just because we're sliding into a moderate risk does not mean the consequences are going to be any less severe. So please heed these warnings.
Yeah, particularly this weekend. There's good snow out there. It's going to be good weather. It's a holiday weekend. Please temper that enthusiasm with good terrain selection.
Thank you, Brian. You can always stay up to date with the latest forecast at Colorado.gov/avalanche. Enjoy the backcountry and be sure to stay alert and stay safe.